Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back to a bustling forum in ancient Rome, a place that smells like olives, marble dust, and a little too much ambition. It's late afternoon. The sun hangs low over the rooftops, casting long shadows through columns and alleyways. You're standing near a statue of Jupiter that looks like it's judging your outfit, and you're trying very hard to casually catch the eye of someone leaning against a fountain. They're laughing with their friends, sipping watered-down wine, and not once do they look your way. This is the Roman version of flirting, and it's not going well. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pace slowly through the crowded forum. Sandals click softly on sun-warmed stones. Perfumed merchants shout about imported silk. A street performer juggles pomegranates, and a man next to you swears he's just seen a senator disguised as a beggar. Rome in all its loud, chaotic, gossip-drenched glory. And you're just trying to get a date. The forum was the social media feed of its time. People met here, gossiped here, and if they were lucky, flirted their way into something warmer than a polite nod. But more often than not, forum flirting fizzled. You catch a glimpse of someone making eye contact, you tilt your head, smile just a little. They smile back, and then nothing. They melt into the crowd, disappear behind a pillar. Or worse, they just keep walking as if that moment didn't even happen. You've just been ghosted in a toga. Mainstream historical fact: Romans didn't marry for love, at least not primarily. Marriages were strategic, arranged for power, legacy, land. Romantic connections. Those happened in backrooms, bathhouses, or nowhere at all. And that meant flirty interactions had zero obligation attached. No second dates. No, let's get garum together sometime. Just a flash of interest and poof, gone. You spot another possible crush, leaning on a pillar, picking at dates in a pouch. They have strong features, one eyebrow that looks permanently amused, and you swear they looked at you for a whole 3 seconds. Boldly, you approach. You open your mouth. They say, "Huh," and walk away. You stare at the ground for a moment, unsure whether that was a rejection or just Roman. For please, leave me to my dried fruit. You regroup by the fountain, where an older woman is lecturing a group of teenagers about proper toga length and moral decay. You take a seat nearby. The marble is cool. The water splashes in time with your heartbeat, which is just slightly faster than it should be. You try not to look like someone who just got emotionally stabbed with a wax stylus. You glance around, hoping for one last spark before heading home. And for a moment, someone across the plaza meets your eyes. They don't look away. You smile again. They start walking toward you. You sit up a little straighter. The woman beside you starts discussing vinegar foot soaks, but you're not listening. Your mystery person is now 10 feet away, 5 feet, 1 foot, and then they walk right past you, right to the woman beside you. Turns out she's their mother, and also turns out they're 12. You make a soft, awkward sound that you hope reads as apologies. Please erase that from all historical record and retreat into the crowd. Quirky tidbit. Some Roman poets made it their life's work to document just how badly romance could go in public. One even wrote an entire ode about locking eyes with a man at a market stall only to have him sneeze violently and knock over all the olives. She never saw him again. Her poem ends with, "I weep not for love, but for wasted fruit." Same. You stop for honeyed pastries, consolation snacks. The vendor asks if you're married. You laugh. They do not. They give you 2 pastries instead of 3, because even pastry vendors are judging your love life. Historians still argue whether ancient Rome was truly as emotionally repressed as it sounds, or if we've just lost the poetry that would have proved otherwise. What we do know is that if someone caught your eye in the forum, your best bet was to admire from a distance, write a poem about it, and maybe hope they'd read it, scratched on a bathhouse wall 2 years later. You head home, clutching your wax tablet, still blank. You tell yourself it's fine. It's not like you needed love anyway, or passion, or even a return smile. You've got your sandals, your snack, and your dignity. Well, one of the 3. Rome is still humming around you. The sunset paints the marble orange and gold. And somewhere in the distance, another hopeful soul is getting ghosted behind a fig cart. You're back home now, reclining awkwardly on a woven mat that's slightly too short for your legs. One sandal's off your tunic is rumpled, and there's honey from a squashed pastry on your elbow. You look every bit like a tragic figure from a bad play, one of those comedies where the punchline is always, "And then he died alone." Beside you is your wax tablet, blank. Again, you sigh, dip your stylus into warm wax, and begin the ritual of all the heartbroken since time immemorial, writing a message you know you'll never send. It starts simple. Salve. Hello. Then something like, "I saw you at the fountain. You had a smile like Venus. I was the one standing by the screaming child and the goat." You pause. You erase the part about the goat. You try again and again. Eventually, you scratch out, "If I could bottle your glance, I'd spill it just to watch it shine." Then immediately regret it. It's too much, or not enough. You flip the tablet over and write on the other side. New message. Same person. New tone. "Hey, you dropped a fig. I almost picked it up. Then I didn't. Better no. Worse." Welcome to the glorious world of ancient Roman love letters, more dramatic than necessary, more poetic than practical, and often met with total silence. In theory, wax tablets were used for notes accounting and to-do lists, but in practice they became emotional message boards for anyone brave enough to risk their heart and stylus. You reread your draft. It's okay. A little desperate, a little charming, but mostly it just feels fragile. So, you do what many did. You set it aside, hoping maybe tomorrow you'll be bold enough to send it. Or maybe you'll just rewrite it again, with slightly fewer metaphors involving figs. Mainstream fact: Romans regularly used wax tablets and folded papyrus letters to send messages, some romantic, some businesslike. These could be passed by hand, carried by slaves, or even tossed discreetly into someone's lap at the baths. But there were no guarantees they'd ever be read, much less returned. In fact, for many Roman women, especially those with higher status, replying to such a message could be scandalous. And for men, not replying, often just a power move. You recall the story of Leah, a girl from the next neighborhood who once received 7 wax tablets in 1 week from a particularly love-struck cheese merchant. On the 8th day, she sent a single reply: "Please stop. I'm lactose intolerant." Harsh, but effective. You walk over to your tiny window, lean your elbows on the stone ledge, and watch a cat lick something unidentifiable in the street. The moon is pale and drowsy tonight. You can almost hear the scrolls sighing in libraries, the ghosts of old lovers whispering, "You too." Because yes, ghosting existed in Rome, and it stung just the same. You light an oil lamp and sit back down. You consider writing a second letter, this time just for yourself. A vent, a little poetic revenge. It begins, "You were the flame, I was the moth, but you were mostly wax, and now I'm on fire." You snort. This one's better. It won't be sent either, but it feels good to write. Quirky tidbit: some Roman tablets have been unearthed with scratch marks of angry erasure, proof of messages rewritten, retracted, or possibly ghosted mid-composition. One even read faintly, "I thought you were different. You were just taller." We truly have not changed. Historians still debate whether Roman love letters were mostly serious or satirical. Were they heartfelt confessions, parodies? A bit of both. The lines blur when people are trying very hard to sound deep, while also trying very hard not to sound like they care. You lie back now, tablet face down on your chest. A candle flickers. You wonder what happens to unsent letters. Do they vanish? Do they echo somewhere in time? Does the universe collect them? Every "I miss you," every "I wish you'd stayed," every "Do you even remember me?" and keep them humming softly in a vault no one can reach. You close your eyes. Still no reply. But the wax is warm in your hand, like maybe your words mattered anyway, even if no one answers. You wake up to the sound of a rooster who sounds as tired of his job as you are of rejection. He crows once, then again, with a tone that says, "It's morning, I guess." You stretch, wipe wax crumbs off your arm, and find yesterday's unsent love letter stuck to your tunic. You sigh, peel it off, and toss it into the corner. It's market day, and everyone's out in their finest fresh togas, polished sandals, and slightly exaggerated cologne. You head to the forum again, not because you're hopeful, but because hope is strangely addictive. Somewhere deep down, you think maybe today they'll notice me. Maybe today you won't be just a face in the crowd. But today is different, because today you spot someone famous. A gladiator, tall, scarred, glinting with sweat and confidence, and that unmistakable glow of someone who survived a dozen fights and probably caused twice as many hearts to flutter. They're leaning casually against a pillar like they invented, leaning, talking to a cluster of admirers who all seem to be speaking at once. And you're watching from a citrus stall, not stalking exactly, just loitering with fruit. You pretend to examine lemons. You drop one. It rolls a little too close to the gladiator's foot. They glance down, then up. They make eye contact. Time freezes. Your heart does the thing where it both races and tries to stop beating entirely. Then they smile. A slow, unreadable gladiator smile. And that's it. They turn back to their admirers. You never see them again. Mainstream fact. Gladiators were the superstars of Rome, especially popular ones. They had fan clubs, admirers, even women of high status, sending them perfumed notes. Some were so famous that locks of their hair were sold at markets, but they rarely wrote back. Relationships were fleeting, obsession, common, actual conversation. Not so much. You pick up your lemon. It feels heavier than before. You carry it like it's dignity. Back at home, your neighbor is telling a story to a small group gathered near the well. She once wrote to a gladiator, he says, eyes twinkling, waited outside the amphitheater for 3 days. He came out, looked at her, and said, "Which one were you again?" The group erupts in laughter. You laugh too, just enough to not look like you relate. That night you sit with your stylus again. This time the wax tablet is scuffed from overuse. You don't even smooth it out. You just carve into the lines like muscle memory. I saw you under the arch, all steel and sun. You looked once. I died twice. You pause. Then add, also, I think I left a lemon near your foot. It's yours now. Quirky tidbit. A preserved letter from Pompeii contains what may be one of the earliest fan notes. It reads, "To the man who made the lion whimper, I offer my heart, my villa, and my goat." No name. No reply. Presumably the goat remained unclaimed. Gladiator ghosting was brutal, not just because you got ignored, but because you got ignored by someone who might die tomorrow. There was no long game. You weren't building to a second date. You were just a moment. A flicker in a cheering crowd. A flower tossed into the arena that never even hit the sand. And still people wrote them letters, sang them songs, drew tiny doodles of them on wax tablets with embarrassing captions like Titus the Thigh Slayer. Historians still argue whether some gladiators secretly responded under fake names, whether behind the bruises and bravado they had hidden crushes they never dared act on, whether one of them once ghosted someone not out of arrogance but fear they'd never make it to morning. You'll never know. You just sit by your oil lamp, tablet in lap, wax softening, and wonder if you've ever been someone's moment, if someone saw you across the forum and forgot how to breathe, if someone wrote to you and never sent it, if maybe somewhere your own kind of fame exists in unspoken glances and unsent scrolls. The wind picks up outside. You hear music in the distance, lute strings being plucked too dramatically by someone with more passion than skill. It's comforting. You think about the gladiator again, that smile, that blink and you miss it glance. And you whisper, almost laughing, Titus the thigh slayer. The wax tablet wobbles in your lap as you chuckle. You don't feel ghosted. Not tonight. Tonight you feel like a poem. Unfinished, sure, but still alive. You're not expecting anything different today. Another loop through the marketplace, another round of people pretending not to notice each other, another scroll's worth of thoughts never sent. You tie your sandals with the resigned precision of someone who knows this dance too well. Out the door, down the alley, past the man who always argues with his chickens. And then something new happens. You're invited to dinner, a real invitation, written, folded, and sealed, with a hasty blob of wax, bearing someone's initials, probably borrowed. It's not from anyone famous, or rich, or particularly poetic, just someone you once stood next to, in line for sweet cakes. You think they said something about your sandals. You responded with an awkward joke, and then forgot about it. But here it is. You blink at the invitation, like it's written in Etruscan. Dinner with someone who doesn't immediately vanish into a crowd. You accept, obviously. You arrive a little early, just to avoid making a scene by showing up late. The home is modest but clean, with a low-burning brazier near the entrance and a couch that looks recently de-linted. There's food, olives, bread, some cheese that may or may not still be edible, and your host is genuinely pleasant. They pour you watered wine, not too strong, not too bitter. They ask about your writing, your sandals, your thoughts on why poets always sound like they're either drunk or heartbroken. It's the most normal kind, possibly promising encounter you've had all month, which is why it hurts more when they never invite you back. Mainstream fact. In Roman times, dinner parties weren't just about food. They were networking events, social performances, sometimes casual auditions for deeper relationships. Invitations were often sent by messenger or word of mouth, but attending didn't guarantee anything. It might be your one and only invite, no explanation, no follow-up. Sound familiar? You wait a day, then two, no tablet, no messenger. You walk by their street one morning very casually, just to see if there's another dinner party happening. The house is quiet. A neighbor is sweeping. You ask, do they live here still? The woman eyes you over the broom and says, they're very busy, which is ancient Roman for don't hold your breath. Back home, you scratch out a half-hearted letter. Thanks for the bread. I think the cheese was alive. I enjoyed your stories about goat theft. If this is goodbye, I understand. But also, ouch. You set it aside. You won't send this one either. You're collecting quite a stack now. quirky tidbit. One recovered letter from a Roman household simply reads, "Dinner was pleasant. I regret the beans." No follow-up, no reply, no clarification. Just the quiet tragedy of digestive regret and ghosted affection. You try to forget, but forgetting doesn't happen easily in a city that remembers everything. The walls remember, the market vendors remember. That one bard near the fish stall sings ballads about everything, including failed romances. You're half convinced one of his songs is about you, the part with the line, and then they vanished like steam in a thermi. Historians still argue whether ghosting was seen as cruel or just normal. In some surviving Roman writings, silence is treated as wisdom. In others, it's clearly a dagger in wax. You lean out your window one evening and see someone drop a scroll into the gutter. You imagine it's a reply that came too late or one that didn't deserve the weight of words. You feel a little better. You start writing poems again. Not about any one person, just about fleeting glances. Good bread, the sound of sandals at dusk. It feels cleaner, lighter. You even make yourself laugh with one "I loved you," like Rome loves drama. Loudly for a moment, then silence, followed by a tax increase. You bring olives to a friend's house. You talk about everything except ghosting. And when someone passes you in the forum and doesn't look your way, you just keep walking. No lemon dropping, no tablet scribbling. You're saving your metaphors for someone who doesn't vanish after dessert. Because the worst part of ghosting isn't the silence. It's the space it leaves behind, a blank you try to fill with meaning. But maybe you don't need to fill it. Maybe you just need to let it echo and move on. The brazier still burns low in your heart, but the smoke is clearing. The sandals still fit. And dinner's not the only thing worth showing up for. You decide it's time for a change of pace. No more mooning over unsent wax letters. No more wandering the forum, pretending you accidentally ended up beside someone whose smile could melt bronze. No more giving citrus fruits to people who will never remember your name. You, dear ghosted Roman citizen, are going to a public bath because nothing says I'm over it like lounging in warm water, surrounded by half-naked strangers discussing politics, philosophy, and fungal remedies. The baths of Caracalla, to be specific. It's late afternoon when you arrive, and the golden light pouring through the arches makes the steam shimmer like something out of a dream, if dreams also smelled faintly of sulfur and feet. You pay the entrance fee, nod at the heavily perfumed attendant, and step into the apoditerium, or changing room, where togas come off and awkward glances begin. Because, make no mistake, this place is not just about hygiene. It's a social theater, and it's crawling with ghosts. Not real ones, romantic ones. You spot at least 3 people you once tried to flirt with. One helped you pick out sandals. One complimented your handwriting. And the last one, the gladiator admirer from Section 3, who smiled once and never again. They're all here, and they are still ignoring you. You pretend not to notice. You make your way into the warm room tepidarium and try to relax. You breathe in eucalyptus oil and listened to the bubbling of the water and the whispered gossip. He sent her a poem on a loaf of bread, someone saying, "She never even ate it," comes the reply. You close your eyes. The steam fills your lungs like a warm sigh. You are alone in a crowd. Again. Mainstream fact. Roman baths were not just cleaning stations. They were community hubs, networking centers, where everything from business deals to romantic entanglements played out. People flirted here. People broke up here. And yes, people ghosted each other right in the hot tub equivalent. You open your eyes just in time to see a familiar face entering the room. It's the one person who did reply to your wax tablet. Once, briefly, months ago. Their message read, "You seem fine," that was it. You weren't sure if it was a compliment or a threat. You didn't reply. Now here they are. Their hair is wet. Their sandals are newer than yours. They see you. They nod. You nod back. And that's it. You've both just ghosted each other in real time. It's weirdly satisfying. You move to the caldarium, the hot room. Here, sweat is the currency, and the walls drip with condensation and secrets. An old man beside you mutters that his third wife never said goodbye, just left a note that read, "Found someone with better goats." You grunt sympathetically. You don't even know what that means, but you get it. You step into the plunge pool. It's cold, icy enough to erase memory, and for a moment that's all you want to scrub away: the waxed tablets, the glances, the goat letters, the dinners that never turned into anything. But even the cold water can't wash away a question that's been clinging to you for weeks. Why does it always happen this way? Quirky tidbit. 1. Roman satirist claimed he once got ghosted in the middle of a bathhouse conversation. The woman simply turned her head and started speaking to someone else. He described the moment as like being slapped with a wet fig leaf. Historians still argue whether ghosting was as psychologically damaging in ancient Rome as it feels now. Some believe people were more emotionally detached. Others point to poems, curses, and graffiti, suggesting that rejection left very real bruises, just quieter, more poetic ones. You dry off slowly. You oil your skin with something that smells faintly of basil and smugness. You put your sandals back on, and as you leave, you see a young couple entering, giggling, clearly infatuated. One drops a towel, the other picks it up. It's disgustingly sweet. You roll your eyes so hard you nearly fall down the stairs. Back home, you write again, but not to anyone, just for yourself. Today I saw ghosts in steam. They didn't haunt me. They just sat there sweating. I think I'm okay now. You smile. Just a little. You light a lamp. You make yourself a snack, and you realize something very Roman. The bathhouse didn't cleanse your skin as much as it rinsed your expectations. You no longer need replies. You no longer need poems back. You just need enough hot water, decent olives, and maybe, if the gods are kind, a wax tablet that doesn't end in silence. You wake up with the faint scent of basil oil still lingering on your skin, a soft reminder of yesterday's bathhouse self-care adventure. Your sandals are dry. Your wax tablets are stacked neatly by the lamp, and you feel for the first time in weeks a quiet kind of peace until you check your doorstep. And there it is, a scroll, a message, sealed, addressed to you. Your heart flips. You're suddenly 16 again, standing in a wheat field somewhere outside Ostia, imagining what love feels like before it ever even finds you. You pick up the scroll with both hands like it might break or fly away or explode in perfume. You stare at the wax seal. You don't recognize the symbol. Is that a horse? Maybe a bird? You break it open anyway and read, "Salve. I hope this reaches you well. You don't know me. Not really. But I've seen you at the fountain. You look like someone who thinks too much. I like that. Would you walk with me sometime?" You drop onto your stool. You read it again and again, and then 5 more times. The handwriting is unsteady but genuine. Not a poet, not a performer, just someone trying and not asking for dinner, not offering a goat. Just a walk. You exhale so sharply it startles your neighbor's cat. Because this is not what you're used to. This is not a dramatic speech, or a serenade, or a cryptic message left on a loaf of barley bread. This is simple, which makes it scarier. Mainstream fact. In Roman times, walking together was one of the most intimate and socially appropriate ways to begin a courtship, especially in public gardens or along aqueduct paths. Unlike banquets or bathhouses, walks didn't require wealth or pretense. Just 2 people and enough time to be honest. You don't write back immediately. You walk instead. Alone at first. Down to the Colline Gate. Past the fruit vendors. You look at everyone differently now. Who wrote the scroll? That woman with the braid and the basket of figs. That man adjusting his tunic with a nervous twitch. Was it someone who's watched you for weeks, waiting for the courage to send wax and words, or was it a joke? A cruel trick. Your stomach twists. Ghosting you can handle. But kindness, that's more difficult. Because what if it's real? And you ghost them, you go home. You sit with your stylus. Your hand hovers over the tablet. You write, "Salve." I saw your words. They landed gently like a fig, falling in soft grass. I walk often. I think too much. But I'd be willing to try thinking a little less if you're there. You pause. Then add, "The fountain. Tomorrow." Just after the bread carts leave, you seal it. You send it. Your messenger grins the entire time like he knows something you don't. Quirky tidbit. A Roman scroll discovered in a trash pit outside a villa contained a love note and the reply on the same sheet. Apparently, the sender had second thoughts and tried to reclaim it. It reads, "Do you like me?" followed by yes and no, each checked off, then scratched out, then checked again. The ancient version of texting, NVM. Historians still debate whether anonymous messages like yours were common or rare. Some suggest they were standard fare in romantic pursuit. Others argue that they were seen as risky, even dangerous, too easy to misinterpret, too easy to destroy. But everyone agrees there's a kind of hope in writing to someone who hasn't asked for your attention. A gamble. But then again, wasn't love always won? The next morning, you wake before sunrise. You don't wear your finest toga, just one that doesn't smell like old wax or bathhouse feet. You walk to the fountain. You wait. You watch the bread carts roll by, tossing crumbs into the mouths of pigeons who act like they own the city. You check the sun, and you start to worry. Then, someone clears their throat behind you. You turn, and there they are. Not stunning, not heroic, just a person, holding 2 figs. They offer you one. You laugh. They laugh. You walk. No one gets ghosted today. No one disappears. Just 2 sets of sandals, side by side, kicking up dust on a city that's seen 1,000 unspoken crushes and will see 1,000 more. And for now, you think, maybe this is enough. You wake up the next morning with fig juice still sticky on your fingers and something even stranger lodged deep in your chest. Optimism. Not the overblown epic kind sung by poets atop marble steps, but the quiet, dangerous kind. The kind that hums beneath your ribs like a new lyre string, taut, unproven, hopeful. You stretch, you squint at the morning sun, and you wonder if today is the day you finally tell your neighbor to stop singing about heartbreak at sunrise. But then again, maybe you understand him now. A little. You dress slowly, deliberately, choosing a tunic without any wine stains. You pass over the old wax tablets. You're not writing today. Not yet. Instead, you have plans, not official ones. Just a walk. Another. With them. The fig giver. The stranger-turned companion. The unghoster. You smile at that. It's not love yet. You wouldn't dare say that. This is still Rome after all. You've read enough poetry to know that love is usually announced too soon, then chased across continents. But something has changed, and it becomes obvious when you arrive at the agreed-upon spot and realize you're early. They're already there, sitting on the edge of a broken column, absently tossing crumbs to a lizard. They look up and wave. Not dramatically, just a wave, like you do this every day. You do now. You walk side by side again. But this time it's not just chatter. You talk about real things. How much you hate oil lamps that sputter. The ache in your knees when the weather shifts. That one time, you fell into a fish cart near the Forum and pretended it was on purpose. They laugh a real laugh, the kind that starts in the stomach. You ask if they've ever been ghosted. They nod. Oh yes, many times. One person wrote them sonnets for a month, then vanished after receiving a thank you loaf of olive bread. Another only spoke to them in riddles, then declared them too literal. You ask if it hurt. They nod again. But you know what's worse, they say. Ghosting someone after they open up. You both go quiet. The wind threads through the olive trees. And you know what you're thinking. You're thinking, please don't let me be that kind of ghost. Mainstream fact. In ancient Rome, emotional vulnerability was often viewed with suspicion. especially among men. Stoicism was prized, but in literature, especially letters and poetry, expressions of longing, confusion, and romantic uncertainty are everywhere. People were afraid of feelings, yet couldn't stop writing about them. You sit under a fig tree, because of course you do. The shade is perfect. The silence between you is companionable now. You ask if they have ever kept the letters. All of them, they say. Even the mean ones. Especially the mean ones, they laugh. You tell them about your wax tablet collection, about the lemon, about the gladiator who smiled once and was never seen again. They nod as if they've known that pain too. And maybe they have. Ghosting, you realize, isn't personal. It's historical. It's embedded into the paving stones and the city walls, into every statue with broken eyes, every coin worn thin from being passed along too many hands. People vanish. People always vanish. But here's something ancient Rome didn't teach you until now. Some people stay. Quirky tidbit, a fragment from a Roman diary, rare and almost childlike in tone, reads, "Today they didn't leave. They stayed." I had no plan for this. The author remains anonymous. But the scroll was found folded into a pair of sandals, like a secret someone carried everywhere. Historians still debate whether long-term romantic partnerships based on emotional compatibility were common in Rome. The record is sparse. Most contracts revolved around property heirs and alliances. But scattered through the graffiti, the notes, the offhand mentions in plays, you find whispers of something else, of people choosing each other, of someone staying, of two people deciding not to disappear. The sun begins to set. You realize hours have passed. You both stand up at the same time. Neither of you says goodbye. You just say, "Tomorrow?" They nod. You walk in opposite directions. And as you do, you realize something beautifully boring. You're not haunted anymore. You're not watching the horizon for who might leave. You're watching the path for who might return. You head home. No letters tonight, just a smile, a fig, and the growing, frightening, comforting sense that maybe, just maybe, you are not alone in this story. The next morning, the air smells like baked limestone and rain that never quite arrived. You lace your sandals a little too tightly, maybe from nerves, maybe from habit. You pass the fruit vendor who once called you a romantic liability, and for the first time, you don't feel the urge to throw a pomegranate at his head. Growth. Today, you're not walking alone. You're not walking toward disappointment. You're walking toward someone who miraculously, bafflingly keeps showing up. They're already there, of course, early again, sitting on that same broken column, fiddling with the seam of their sleeve like it's a musical instrument. You don't speak at first. You just walk. This time toward the edge of the city, beyond the forum, past the markets, past the bathhouses, toward the hills where things are quieter and your thoughts don't echo so loudly. The silence between you now is different. Not heavy, not awkward, just full of the soft sounds of sandals on dirt, and birds doing whatever it is birds do when they're not pooping on statues. They offer you a slice of pear. It's sweet. You don't ask where they got it. You just nod. You're starting to trust things without dissecting them. It feels dangerous. It also feels like peace. And Rome rarely gives you both. As you round the path near a collapsed aqueduct, they suddenly ask, "Do you think we're just waiting to ghost each other?" It stops you cold. You blink. You look at them. They're not smiling, not teasing, just asking. You think for a moment. Then you say, "I think we've already proven we're not." They nod. Slowly. But they don't look convinced. Because you know as well as they do in this city, disappearing isn't an event. It's a tradition. Mainstream fact, Roman society was intensely mobile. People moved constantly between households, cities, provinces. Even in romantic or domestic relationships, sudden absences weren't unusual. Military service, arranged marriages, death exile, debt, all common reasons someone might vanish without closure. So, when someone did stay, it felt unnatural, like defying gravity. You stop walking. You sit near a shrine, one of those crumbling ones, half forgotten, with a cracked offering bowl and ivy strangling the columns. You both stare at it, like maybe the old gods still listen. They ask, "Have you ever vanished on someone?" And you're not proud, but you say yes. You don't explain everything, but you admit you once stopped replying to a scroll because the handwriting made you uncomfortable. That another time you wrote a breakup note, rolled it too tightly, and it never uncoiled. You left it that way. Let them assume. Their face softens, not because they approve, but because they understand. They tell you about a poet who wrote them verses every week for a month and how they couldn't bear to read the last one, so they burned it. Still don't know what it said. You both laugh, but it's a sad kind of laugh. Quirky tidbit. Archaeologists once found a tiny scroll buried beneath a home's threshold, its message still legible. It read, "If you come back, knock twice. If you don't, I'll pretend you never meant it." The home burned down less than a year later. Historians still argue whether these personal remnants, notes, graffiti, curses, reflect widespread emotional norms or just the loud voices of the few who had leisure to write. But the weight of these scraps, these surviving words, says one thing clearly: ghosting has always been personal, even when it wasn't meant to be. You both rise, brush dust from your knees, and you make a small, wordless promise: if you feel the need to vanish, you'll at least send one last fig. You joke about writing it into law. The lex non ghostium, they snort. You both agree it wouldn't pass the Senate. Too much truth in it. As you walk back into the city, the noise returns. Vendors shouting, children racing with olive branches, two lovers arguing over whether goats count as a dowry. But you're still moving in sync, and for once, your thoughts aren't sprinting ahead, imagining all the ways this could collapse. You're just here, now, with someone who walks at your pace, not chasing, not being chased, just walking. It starts with a bench, not just any bench, an old one half-eaten by time tucked beside a public fountain that gurgles more air than water. You're on your way to the forum when you see it. The bench, empty, a little crooked, somehow inviting. So naturally you sit, and almost immediately you feel eyes. Not threatening, just curious. A familiar kind of curious. You turn. It's them. Of course, carrying a small pouch of olives, looking mildly surprised to see you, but not in a bad way. More like, oh, there you are. They sit. They say, I almost didn't walk this way. You say, I almost kept walking. And then neither of you say anything for a while, because this is a silence that doesn't require filling. Eventually, they hand you an olive. You take it. That's how the ritual begins. Same bench, same time, same two people. You don't plan it. You don't announce it. It just becomes part of the rhythm of your days, like checking the sun or nodding to the goat seller with the squeaky voice. The bench becomes your third companion. It holds the weight of conversations too fragile to carry elsewhere. The ones about what you wanted to be when you were young, or why you hate thunder, or that time you thought you were in love with a statue. They laugh too hard at that one, but they get it. Mainstream fact. In ancient Rome, informal meeting places like public benches, fountains, or steps often served as default social spaces. Romantic relationships, business discussions, and even philosophical debates all happened on these unremarkable structures, turning stone and wood into something like memory magnets. One afternoon, you show up and they don't. You sit anyway. You count the olives in your pouch. You try to remember their last words from yesterday, something about helping a neighbor mend a broken stool. Harmless, but time stretches, and doubt trickles in. Your fingers twitch toward your wax tablet tucked in your satchel, just in case, but you don't write. Not yet. You wait. The sky turns that soft Roman blue that only appears when you're feeling especially dramatic. You imagine all the reasons they're not here, all the excuses you've heard before. My uncle needed me. There was a goat emergency. I fell down a well. I joined a cult. Sorry. You seem nice, but I'm emotionally broken from a previous gladiator. You stand up. You walk home, slowly, trying not to write the ending before it writes itself. They knock on your door that evening, holding a cracked clay pot and a wild look in their eyes. I spilled soup on a senator, they say. I had to run. You burst out laughing. And the relief that pours through you is so intense it feels like being wrung out like a toga in a cold stream. You let them in. They don't stay long, just long enough to say, I thought you'd be gone by now. You say I almost was. And both of you pretend that's the end of the conversation, even though it isn't, even though the bench still waits. Quirky tidbit. In Pompeii, graffiti on a bench reads, she said she'd meet me here. I think she lied. But the bench is comfortable, so I stayed. It's considered one of the oldest passive-aggressive posts in Western history. Historians still argue whether such non-places, benches, thresholds, stairwells played a true emotional role in relationships. But anyone who's waited, watched, or whispered secrets from a stone seat knows location is just the excuse. The real meaning comes from who shows up. You return to the bench together the next day. No words, just olives. The city rumbles around you. Romans shouting, wheels clacking, a child playing a flute badly. It all becomes background, because on this crooked old bench, in this sprawling, noisy empire, you've carved out something shockingly rare. Consistency, not passion, not epic, just presence. And presence in a world where people vanish like smoke might be the greatest act of rebellion. The next time you pass the Senate steps, something shifts in your chest. You've walked this route 1,000 times, past the columns, past the marble statues, missing noses, past the cluster of old men arguing about laws none of them truly understand. But today, you pause. You look at the faces around you, and you realize how many of them used to be familiar, used to say hello, used to brush your sleeve or smile or nod as they passed. And now they're ghosts, living, breathing ghosts, not gone, just silent. You spot one across the plaza, a former flame, a former, almost. Someone who once carved your initials into a wax tablet and sent you dates for a week. You raise your hand. They don't wave back. They look through you, past you, as if you were never there. You lower your hand slowly, and for a brief moment the urge to vanish yourself presses hard against your chest. But then you feel it, your companion's fingers brushing lightly against yours. Just enough contact to anchor you, just enough to say, I see you. And suddenly you can breathe again. You both walk away from the Senate, together. And yet you joke softly, but with real irritation. Ghosting should be illegal. They grin. Try passing that in the Senate, they say. And that's when the idea hits. Half joke, half sincere. A ghosting contract. You both spend the rest of the afternoon drafting it on a wax tablet, sitting under a cypress tree where it's too warm, but the shade feels like safety. You scratch the words carefully. Article 1. If either party intends to disappear emotionally or physically, they shall offer the other party one fig as warning. Article 2. The fig may be accompanied by a note, verbal message, or interpretive dance, but must be sincere. Article 3. Repeat offenses will result in olive withholding privileges. Article 4. Exceptions may be made for death, gladiatorial imprisonment, or sudden plague. You read it aloud with solemn dignity. You both burst out laughing. Mainstream fact. Formal contracts were central to Roman society, not just in trade and law, but also in marriage mentorship, even friendship. Contractus amicitiae, contracts of friendship, were occasionally used to define obligations between individuals, while ghosting wasn't named betrayal of expectation, certainly was. The tablet cracks slightly at the edge as you etch the final clause. Article 5. If either party truly cares, they will stay, even when it is inconvenient, boring, or figless. You both sign. Then you eat the stylus-shaped fig you'd brought just in case. It tastes like ink. You don't care. That evening, as the torches flicker on the villa walls and the streets hum with quiet sandals and tired voices, you walk past couples who no longer talk, past friends who once shared wine and now avoid each other's gaze. You wonder what their last words were, if they knew they were final, or if the silence just grew until it filled every scroll, every room, every gesture. That's the worst kind of ghosting, the kind that doesn't feel sudden, the kind that pretends it's not happening until it already has. Quirky Tidbit, a satirical Roman playwright, once included a scene where a woman explains to her lover that she's not ghosting. She's merely practicing absence for his benefit. Scholars believe this is the first literary use of the romantic slow fade. Historians still argue whether ancient Roman relationships were ever truly private. With slaves, scribes, messengers, and neighbors all involved, even a short courtship could become a public affair. And yet, despite the noise, the endings were often quiet, brutally, epically, infuriatingly quiet. Back at your bench, you pull out the tablet. Your companion reads it again aloud, this time with mock grandeur. We, the undersigned, hereby agree not to disappear unless struck by divine lightning or crushed by falling marble. You laugh. But inside you know something has changed. You've both admitted it. You fear being forgotten. And you've both agreed casually, jokingly, on cheap wax, that forgetting each other will not be the ending. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not unless Rome herself collapses under her own dramatic weight. You sit on the bench until the stars appear, until the olive vendor packs up, until the flute-playing child plays one last off-key note and runs home. And in the hush that follows, your companion reaches for your hand. You let them. Because silence now doesn't mean distance. It means rest. It means presence. It means no one's ghosting anyone tonight. The night after the fig contract you dream in Latin. Not the poetic kind, the scroll-worthy Virgil whispers to your soul kind. No, this is bureaucratic Latin. Stuffy, dry. The kind stamped on debt scrolls and tax ledgers. In the dream, you're arguing with a priest about whether emotional abandonment qualifies as a breach of civic duty. You wake up laughing, and maybe just maybe a little proud, because that's how deeply ghosting has carved itself into your daily life. It's now showing up in your subconscious as administrative policy. You stretch, blink at the window slats, and hear a knock at the door. It's them, holding a palm leaf tray of slightly burned flatbread. They say I made too much. You don't question the lie. You take the bread still warm. You invite them in. Over breakfast, if slightly charred bread, and Yesterday's grapes count you talk about the gods, specifically Venus. Specifically, whether she's laughing at you. They say Venus enjoys chaos. You say Venus needs a hobby. You both agree. Praying for romantic clarity in Rome is like asking a lion not to eat you because you sent a nice note. Mainstream fact: Romans frequently prayed to Venus for help in love and courtship. Temples to Venus Erycina and Venus Verticordia served as places where both men and women offered gifts in the hope of romantic success. Yet surviving records show more complaints than gratitude, meaning Venus likely received more post-ghosting rage prayers than praise. Your companion shares a story. Once they lit incense, poured wine, and asked Venus for a sign. The next day, a pigeon dropped an entire fig onto their head. They took it as approval. You're still not sure. You go for a walk, a slow one, no destination. And on a whim, you stop by the Temple of Venus. It's half ruined, half beautiful. Like most things in Rome, you don't go inside. You just sit on the edge of the steps. They rest their head on your shoulder briefly like a question. You don't answer. You just lean back and ta-da, together. You watch the clouds drift across the sky like the slowest ghosts imaginable. Later, you visit a small scroll shop, mostly to browse, partly because the owner is too old to care if you touch things without buying. They have a display called Lost Letters. It's just a basket of abandoned scrolls, unsent, unclaimed, unread. You pick one, unroll it. It says, "Only did you mean it?" You close it gently, put it back. You don't need that energy in your life. Not anymore. Quirky tidbit. A recovered letter from Vindolanda, a Roman fort in Britain, contains what some historians believe to be the earliest known you-up message. It reads, "If you find yourself awake by the 9th hour, perhaps we could meet. I've brought wine." The reply was never found. Historians still argue whether Roman gods were seen as emotionally responsive beings or merely transactional entities. Did Venus actually meddle in mortal affairs? Or did she just watch us flail with mild amusement? The line between faith and projection is, after all, blurry, especially when love is involved. Back on the bench, your companion reads your contract again. They say, "What if we added an amendment?" You nod. They scribble something on the back, "Amendment." When feelings become unbearable, the bearer shall whisper them under a fig tree rather than vanishing. You grin. You shake on it. No notary needed. That night, as torches flicker against the alleyways, and somewhere far off, someone sings a song you only half remember. You pause in the street and look up at Venus. She's just a blur of light, really, but you nod anyway, just in case she's watching. You don't ask for anything. You just mouth thanks for not ruining this one yet, because so far, no one's disappeared. No wax tablets have been returned unopened, and no fig has landed dramatically on your doorstep. In Rome, that's progress. The trouble starts with a goat. Not yours, not theirs. Just a goat. One of those neighborhood goats that seems to belong to everyone and no one at once. The kind that stands in doorways like it's paying rent and interrupts romantic moments by chewing on tunics. This one charges through your usual meeting spot, your bench, right as your companion's trying to confess something. You don't even hear what it is. Just a soft, "I've been meaning to say," followed by a loud bleat, a flurry of hooves, and a flying fig that lands in someone's hair. By the time the goat is chased off by an angry baker, wielding a rolling pin like a war club, your companion's gone silent. The moment apparently has passed. You both stare at the half-eaten fig on the ground, and neither of you laugh. Later, you write a message. You roll it tightly like always. You hand it to a boy who promises he'll deliver it to them personally. But when you ask the next day if they got it, they blink. What message? You blink. And suddenly, the air feels heavier, mainstream fact. In Rome, messages were typically delivered by slaves or hired boys. There was no formal postal system for private citizens. Messages could easily be intercepted, misplaced, or forgotten, whether by accident or intention. A society built on letters was also one plagued by silence. You write another. This one, you deliver yourself. But they're not home. You leave it with their neighbor, who smiles in that suspicious way neighbors do. The next morning, you find the wax tablet leaning against your doorstep, unread, unopened, untouched. You try not to spiral. You fail. You pace the forum like a lost senator. You sit at your bench alone. You buy figs you don't want. You visit the temple of Venus and yell at a statue. You whisper under a fig tree as per the contract. You even compose a speech in your head about how everything in this city disappears. Fountains, friends, lovers, goats, and how you're sick of it. But you never deliver it. Because when you finally see them again, they look tired and they say, "I never got your message." You ask, "Not even the one with the terrible poetry?" They blink. You wrote poetry. You deflect. But your heart unclenches. Just a little. Quirky tidbit. 1. Roman love letter reads, "You must not believe what my servant said. He confused the message. I said I longed for your hair, not your heir." Scholars still debate whether it was a genuine error or a clever excuse. Historians still argue whether ancient relationships suffered more miscommunication than modern ones, or just different kinds. Without phones, delays were expected, but without tone emojis or voice, every message was a gamble. Was that sarcasm a joke, an insult, a goodbye? You never knew until it was too late. You both sit on the bench again. No fig today, no goat either. Just you, them, and a cautious sense of rhythm returning. You tell them about the angry message you never sent. They tell you they almost left the city. No note, no scroll, no goodbye. "But I didn't," they say. You nod, and that's enough. Because in Rome, sometimes the bravest thing isn't declaring your love on parchment. It's showing up. Again. Even when the goats are loud and the messengers are liars and the silence is tempting, you stay. Together. Figlessly, wordlessly, faithfully. You begin to notice things. Tiny things. The way they scratch their neck when nervous. How they always split a pomegranate exactly in 4 parts. The fact that they hum the same 3 notes whenever they think no one's listening. They do it now, walking beside you, weaving through a crowded market near the Subura district, Rome's messy, noisy heart. Fish smell, frying oil, barkers yelling about sandals made from dolphin leather, which you're pretty sure isn't real. Someone juggles knives next to a man preaching about Saturn's revenge. You should be distracted, but all you can think about is that humming. 3 notes, off key, weirdly comforting. You smile, and they notice. What they ask, you shake your head. Nothing. You're just loud in your own quiet way. They roll their eyes, but you catch the corners of their mouth, twitching. You pass a stall, selling lockets, little bronze pendants shaped like amphorae, and acorns and eyes, supposed to bring luck, love, protection from betrayal. They hold one up, an eye-shaped locket, protection from ghosts. You say only if it blinks. You buy it anyway. Mainstream fact. Romans were intensely superstitious about love and loss. They wore amulets to protect relationships and repel betrayal. The evil eye pendant, believed to ward off jealousy and ill will, was especially popular among lovers and newlyweds. You wear yours now, not because you believe it works, but because you like the weight, the symbolism, the idea that something, anything, might shield you from silence, even if it's just a small, badly carved bronze eyeball. Later, you walk to the river. It's dusk. Tiber shimmers like it's trying to be a poet. You sit by the bank and toss in stones. They ask, "Do you think ghosts like water?" You shrug. Depends if they can swim. They nudge you. You pretend to almost fall in. They grab your arm with real concern, and suddenly your joke feels heavier than intended, because now their hand's on yours, and neither of you lets go. Quirky tidbit. Some Romans believed a ghost could only cross a river if invited. That's why certain funeral rites included boat-shaped lamps meant to guide spirits gently across and keep them from wandering. Historians still argue whether this belief stemmed from Greek traditions or indigenous Italic myth, but either way, it shaped Roman romantic metaphor. Crossing water became a symbol of risk, of commitment, of choosing not to vanish when the current gets rough. Back at their place, they give you something, not jewelry, not a scroll, a cup, just a small misshapen clay cup with a crack near the rim. "I made it," they say. You ask, "Is it cursed?" They laugh. "Maybe." You turn it in your hands. It's awful. Beautifully awful. Like your first attempt at baking, or your first love letter, which accidentally addressed someone's mother instead. You hold the cup like it's sacred, because it is, not because it's valuable, but because it's shared. because it's theirs. Later, when you're home, you place it beside your bed. No fanfare, no temple blessing, just a cracked clay cup in a cracked clay city. And somehow that feels more permanent than any scroll, more honest than any fig, because ghosting happens when someone stops caring enough to try. And this is trying. The weather turns. You wake to the smell of wet stone and the sound of dripping eaves. Rome in the rain is less epic and more damp. Streets clog with muddy water. Togas drag like sad curtains. Dogs bark at puddles as if personally offended. You pull your cloak tighter and head to the market anyway, because they said they'd meet you there. And you believe them. Sort of. Kind of. You want to. The market is quieter in the rain. Fewer tourists, fewer scammers, fewer statues covered in bird droppings, but more silence, that dangerous kind. You hover near the olive stall. The vendor sees you, raises an eyebrow. No second pouch today, she asks. You shake your head. Not yet. She doesn't ask more. Vendors in Rome know better. They've seen too many people wait. You circle the forum once, twice. You check the temple steps, the graffiti wall, even the goat alley. Nothing. You sit on your bench, wet as it is, and try not to sink into yourself. The rain doesn't stop, but your pacing does. You breathe. You wait. And finally, footsteps. It's them, hair soaked, cloak dripping, eyes wide with apology. They sit beside you without a word, hand you a warm, crumpled pouch. You open it. 2 figs and a note. The figs are squishy. The note says, I didn't mean to disappear. You nod slowly. Say, you didn't. Not really. And for a while, that's enough. Mainstream fact. Roman communication relied heavily on in-person meetings. Weather could delay everything: commerce announcements, romantic liaisons. Missing a rendezvous because of rain was not uncommon, and often became a test of patience and affection. They tell you what happened. They overslept. Their neighbor's roof collapsed. They tried to send a message, but the courier got distracted by a street fight and lost the scroll. Classic Rome. You believe them, but more importantly, you want to believe them. So you do. You both wander the city, soggy and silent, eventually ducking under a baker's awning. They give you free bread. You're not sure why. Maybe they mistake you for a couple, maybe pity, maybe it's just raining, and Rome sometimes does nice things by accident. You tear the loaf in half, offer them the bigger piece. They refuse. You insist. They take it, and in that small exchange, something mends. Quirky tidbit: Roman lovers often exchange small loaves of bread as tokens of affection. Archaeologists have even found loaves stamped with pet names like Sweet Fig or My Little Pomegranate. One famously awkward loaf was marked yours, unless you stop answering. Historians still argue whether Roman rain was considered romantic or just an inconvenience. Some poems describe rain as cleansing, symbolic of rebirth. Others complain it ruins hairstyles and makes sandals squeak. Reality, as usual, is somewhere soggy in between. That evening, you both return to the bench. You talk about everything except the missed meeting. You quote bad poetry. You invent names for the pigeons. You place a cracked cup between you like a sacred artifact. And eventually, as dusk stretches like old cloth across the sky, they ask, "Are you still mad?" You think, shake your head. No, just soggy. They laugh. You laugh. The rain doesn't stop, but it doesn't matter anymore because they showed up. Wet, late, breathless, but real. And in this city of vanishing acts and unfinished scrolls, that's rare. That's sacred. That's enough. Rome smells different after rain. Not better, just different. The usual cocktail of sweat, smoke, olive brine, and ambition gets diluted, softened. The streets shine like someone took a cloth to the whole city. Even the marble looks bashful, like it didn't expect to be seen this clearly. You and your companion walk slowly, not because you have anywhere to go, but because the city has turned reflective, and so have you. They ask if you remember the first message you sent. You lie. Say, of course, you don't. It was probably something ridiculous about figs, or rain, or politics disguised as flirting. They laugh. I kept it, you know. You pause. You kept it. They nod. Folded inside the sleeve of a tunic I never wear. You try to act casual. You fail. Your heart does something embarrassingly fluttery. They grin. You pretend to care very deeply about a passing donkey. You arrive at the public baths, not to bathe, to watch. There's a rhythm to it, bodies moving through steam conversations, echoing off stone friendships and rivalries, unfolding in a cloud of citrus oil and secrets. You sit on a bench outside. They sit beside you. No fig today. Just shared silence. Mainstream fact, Roman baths were more than places to clean yourself. They were centers of gossip, negotiation, courtship, and reconciliation. Many relationships, romantic and otherwise, were mended or broken in the steamy haze of a public caldarium. Inside, someone is yelling about towels. Someone else is reciting love poetry badly. Your companion raises an eyebrow. You whisper, "Should we add public poetry crimes to our contract?" They nod solemnly. Article 6. No unsolicited verses in echo chambers. You both stifle laughter. A child runs by, drenched and joyful. You watch them like you're watching an earlier version of yourself, one that didn't know about contracts or ghosting or the ache of almost love. A seller passes by with scrolls, tiny ones, palm-sized, designed for secrets. You buy two. They ask why. You say, for future offenses. They don't ask what kind, but they hold on to theirs, like it already contains a confession. Quirky tidbit, miniature scrolls were popular among young Romans as secret notes often tied to gifts or slipped into sandals. One famous unearthed scroll read simply, "You look better, angry." Historians still argue whether these notes were taken seriously or seen as flirtatious games, but archaeological layers suggest people kept them buried in walls, under beds, inside statues long after the words had faded. Ghosts in parchment form. As the sun dips behind the dome of a temple, your companion finally speaks. Do you think people disappear because they want to? Or because they don't know what to say? You answer slowly. I think they disappear because silence feels safer than explanation. They nod, then whisper, I'm trying to choose differently. You don't reply. You just take their hand. Not dramatically, not romantically, just steady, like a promise without a speech. You stay until the light turns gold, until the bathhouse begins to empty, until your fig contract tucked into your sleeve feels warm from your skin. And when you walk home, it's together. No fanfare, no doves, no statues weeping olives, just the sound of sandals on wet stone. And the feeling that maybe, just maybe, neither of you is going to vanish this time. The next morning you wake to find a scroll wedged in your doorframe, not sealed, not signed. Just a single line scrawled across it in shaky ink. Would you still wait if I never promised to come back? You stare at it far longer than necessary, then roll it up gently and slide it into the crack between your pillow and the wall. Not because you want to answer it, but because the question already knows. You don't have plans today. That's not new. Rome rarely respects schedules. Pigeons interrupt breakfast, senators argue until dusk, and lovers send existential scrolls before sunrise. So, naturally, you take a walk. You end up at the Temple of Janus. The gates are open. Always a bad sign. It means Rome is at war somewhere with someone about something. No one really remembers why anymore. But the temple remains symbolic. Open gates equals unrest. Closed gates, peace. You whisper to yourself, maybe I'll start treating my heart like a Janus gate. Your heart replies, that sounds exhausting. They find you there, not on purpose, more like fate or pigeons. They sit beside you. The steps are cold, the air still tastes like rain. They hand you another scroll. This one says, let's stop trying to be poetic about it. I don't want to disappear. I just don't always know how to stay. You read it twice. Then tear a corner off and scribble, same. Hand it back. Neither of you smiles. But you do lean in, shoulder to shoulder, forehead to temple. Like statues in a half-forgotten myth. Mainstream fact, the Temple of Janus was associated with beginnings, transitions, and duality. Janus was the god of doors, gates, and time, always facing forward and backward. Roman poets often used him as a metaphor for indecision, for being caught between staying and leaving. You wander again, this time into a part of the city you haven't seen in years. A hill with wildflowers, a vine-covered wall, and carved into the plaster a line of graffiti in Latin. I waited. You didn't. You run your fingers over it, like Braille. They ask what it says. You lie. Just some bad poetry. They believe you or let you have the lie. Either way, it's mercy. Quirky tidbit, Roman graffiti often included love notes, revenge, threats, and laments. One Pompeian wall reads, Secundus loves Iris, but Iris loves all. Another says, don't trust anyone who quotes Catullus at dinner. Historians still argue whether Roman graffiti was meant to be permanent or fleeting art or vandalism. But what survives tells a story of unfiltered emotion, of desperation, of humor in heartbreak. A love letter etched in stone lasts longer than one on parchment. That night, you sit together again, not at the usual bench, but on a crumbling wall, legs dangling over the side. Below Rome buzzes, above the stars, forget your name, but twinkle anyway. They say, if I disappear again, don't write me another scroll. You ask, why not? They say because I'll come back anyway. Just maybe with less poetry. You laugh, but not loudly, because some promises don't need volume, just repetition. The scroll is blank. That's the first thing you notice. No ink, no seal, no clever poem in shaky Latin, just a thin rectangle of unwritten parchment folded carefully and placed inside a small clay cup. Your cup. The one they gave you. You find it waiting at your doorstep. No footsteps. No knock. Just there. Like a ghost that remembered where your home was, paused long enough to leave a message, then melted back into the city before the sun could rise. You stand there barefoot. The morning is quiet. Rome hasn't fully woken yet. The baker hasn't shouted. The children haven't started their games. The street cats are still fighting over last night's fish bones in hushed, violent whispers, and you're holding a cup of silence. Literal silence, really. Because what is a blank scroll, if not a very polite way of saying nothing at all? But somehow, that nothing feels like everything. Like a door cracked open, but not yet crossed. You run your thumb across the parchment. No hidden words. No lemon juice ink. No scent of lavender oil or wine to give away who touched it. But you know who sent it. You don't need proof. Because the kind of people who send blank scrolls are also the kind of people who once asked if ghosts can swim. You tuck the scroll into your tunic pocket and keep the cup. Even rinse it this time. You make tea despite the heat, because ritual is how you talk to yourself. And sipping tea from a flawed clay vessel makes you feel less flawed by association. It tastes better than usual, not because it's special, but because it's familiar. You step into the street. Rome greets you like she always does, with damp stones and stubborn pigeons. The city exhales in oil smoke and rosemary, unbothered by your personal crisis. Down at the Forum, someone is already arguing about fish taxes, about Jupiter's will, about how olive prices are obviously the fault of Neptune. You ignore them. You're on a mission now. Not dramatic, just purposeful. You walk the edge of the market where the stalls sell fewer things and more space, used cloaks, slightly cracked amphory sandals with mismatched straps. It's quiet here. A woman waves you over. "You again," she says, pointing to the fig basket. You nod. She holds one up, soft or firm. You hesitate, then ask, "Do you believe in signs?" She squints. "Only the kind I can chew." You smile and take two. Soft. You always choose soft when your heart feels hard. You carry them through the streets like offerings, not to a temple, to a bench. Your bench. You sit. You place one fig down on the right one on the left and the cup in the middle like a centerpiece. And you wait. Again. Still. Always. They don't come. But a stranger does. Tall. Wrapped in a dark cloak, they walk past, pause, and double back. They hand you something. No words. Just a nod. And then they're gone. You open it. A receipt. 2 figs. Paid in coin. No name. No date. But on the back a tiny sketch, a cracked cup with a heart drawn slightly off center. Not perfectly, just earnestly. You place it with the blank scroll. They belong together, even if they never say so. Mainstream fact. Roman lovers often sent gifts anonymously, especially food and flowers. A fig, a pomegranate, or a single sweet cake left on a doorstep said more than ink ever could. And even the absence of a signature was considered part of the message, a silent hope the receiver would just know. You stay on that bench as the light softens. Rome begins her afternoon hum, wheels on stone vendors calling for lunch, coin birds squabbling over breadcrumbs outside the baker's shade. You watch a couple argue 2 stalls over. She throws a scroll at his feet. He picks it up, tears it in half, then hugs her. You blink, because apparently that's how some people communicate. You lean back, close your eyes, and in your head, you're back on the riverbank. That day, with the question, "Would you still wait if I never promised to come back?" You never answered. But your bones did. They whispered, "Yes," even as your mouth stayed silent, even as your hands shook. Because hope is ridiculous like that. It roots itself in your marrow and refuses eviction. Quirky tidbit. Roman hope deities were small and rarely worshipped with grandeur. One Spes was considered a quiet god, prayed to in secret in corners by those who had nothing else left. Her temples were modest, but her followers constant. Historians still argue whether this devotion to small hope was stoicism or delusion, whether Roman lovers clung to belief because they were brave or because they were lonely. Either way, the scrolls keep showing up. The figs keep getting bought. The benches stay warm. And people gods help them keep waiting. A child runs past and snatches one of your figs. You don't mind. You've got the receipt after all. You slide the blank scroll into the empty cup and press it between your palms. It's warm, which makes no sense. But then again, Rome doesn't always make sense either. It just is. Loud, contradictory, too big and too personal, like love, like hope, like the feeling that someone might still write back, even if it's just a picture of a broken cup and a lopsided heart. And that maybe, just maybe, you'll understand exactly what it means. The fig is gone, not stolen, not eaten, just gone. You return to the bench the next morning, the way you always do, half out of habit, half out of absurd hope, and you notice it immediately. One fig remains bruised on its side like it's been sleeping too long. The cup is still there, the blank scroll, folded differently, and the fig on the left, gone. You blink, once, twice, then smile, because for the first time in days, someone has answered, not with ink, not with a speech, just with a decision. Someone chose the left fig, and you know what that means. You sit knees tucked and unfold the scroll. It's not blank anymore. There are 7 words scrawled in quick, jagged ink. I didn't know if you still would. You don't cry. You don't laugh. You just hold the scroll against your chest, letting the weight of it settle somewhere between your ribs and your memory. Of course you would. Of course, you always did. The market is quiet today. Overcast sky, fewer tourists, fewer distractions. You walk the rows slowly, not to buy, but to see, to let the city reveal itself, one sound at a time. A boy is learning to whistle by the olive stall. A butcher sings to his lamb carcasses. 2 lovers argue over which melon feels luckier. And, for a moment, the world feels lighter. Not because it is, but because you're not holding it alone anymore. Mainstream fact. The Romans deeply believed in omens tied to everyday objects, fruit birds, weather. A chosen fig wasn't just food. It could signal affection, forgiveness, or intent. Priests called augurs interpreted these signs, even making legal or political decisions based on them. You stop at the scribe's corner. They're hawking pre-written scrolls today. Generic apologies, declarations of love, even resignation letters for soldiers too afraid to desert the old-fashioned way. One scribe offers you a scroll. It says, "I forgive you," half price. You chuckle. Do you sell ones that say, "I waited"? He nods. But those cost extra. You don't buy one. You don't need to. You already wrote yours in hours and footsteps and figs and silence. Back on your bench, the remaining fig softens. You think about eating it, but you don't. Not yet. Because it's not yours anymore. Not entirely. Not after someone took the left one. Not after 7 words on a scroll said more than any poet ever did. Quirky tidbit. Roman love rituals included exchanging fruits, carving names into doorposts, and whispering wishes into amphorae before sealing them with wax. Some would place a fig under their lover's pillow, hoping for dreams, or maybe just forgiveness. Historians still argue whether these acts were personal magic or performative hope, whether people truly believed a fruit or a whisper could sway the heart, or if it simply gave them something to do with their hands while waiting. You believe both are true because ritual is rarely rational, but it is necessary, especially when the soul is tired of talking. You write a new note that evening. Just 2 words this time. Still here. You don't sign it. You don't fold it with precision. You just leave it under the cup. Not for them. Not really. Just for yourself. To remember that waiting isn't the same as being lost. To remind yourself that silence is not always the enemy. Sometimes it's just the page before the letter begins. When you leave, you walk slower than usual. You pass the graffiti wall, now sun-bleached and half crumbling. The angry love poem from weeks ago is fading. You trace your fingers along it one last time, and underneath the fading lines you see something new, scratched lightly, barely visible. 2 initials, yours and theirs. No heart, no arrow, just side by side, like they've always been, like they'll always try to be, even when the figs run out, even when the scrolls stay blank, even when you're both afraid to write the next line. The next scroll arrives at night, not morning, not midday night. It doesn't knock. It doesn't wait in your doorway like the others. It simply appears curled and quiet inside your sandals by the door, like it wanted to be close to you, to your steps, as if it knew where you'd walk tomorrow. You unroll it slowly, expecting another cryptic confession. Instead, you find a list, a numbered list, each line written in their familiar, inconsistent hand. I borrowed your cup. I bought 2 more figs. I only ate 1. I watched you from the forum steps. You laughed at something I couldn't hear. I forgave you for not knowing. I forgive myself slower. I don't know what this is, but I want to find out. I'll meet you by the river at dusk, if you want. You sit there for a long time, reading the list, then rereading it, then holding it open across your lap like a warm cloth, as if the ink itself might hold their heat, as if the parchment could pulse. You place the scroll beside your other treasures, the blank one, the receipt, the sketch of the broken cup, the fig pit you never threw away, and you realize something strange. You're not waiting anymore. You're choosing. The river smells like moss tonight, soft water, lapping against stone, and Rome feels unusually kind. The sun is dripping behind the rooftops like honey off warm bread, light so golden it makes even the rust look regal. You sit on the steps just above the water. You bring no fig, no scroll, no performance, just presence. That's enough now. You think about what you'll say if they show up. Then you think about what you won't say. And maybe most importantly, what you'll finally stop trying to explain. Mainstream fact. The Tiber River was not only Rome's lifeline for trade and travel, it was a witness to history. Lovers carved initials into its banks. Emperors drowned enemies in its depths, and poets came here to think, to ache, and sometimes to forget. A breeze stirs the reeds. Somewhere a lyre is playing, soft and out of tune. You wait, the way the river does not impatiently, but expectantly. Like the moment was always going to arrive, but didn't want to be early. Then footsteps, and silence, and then them, standing unsure, holding the cup. Your cup, except now it has a crack down the side. They offer it without a word. You take it, and you don't flinch at the brokenness. You hold it like it's whole, because in this moment it is. They sit beside you, shoulders brush, no scrolls between you, no sighs trying to turn into speeches, just shared stillness, like a new contract that doesn't need parchment, like a promise written in breath. Quirky tidbit, ancient Roman contracts were sometimes sealed with wax, sometimes with witnesses, but the most sacred ones, those were sealed with silence. Two parties would sit face to face and simply nod. That was enough. That was law. Historians still argue whether love can be legally binding, whether affection, once repeated often enough, carries the same weight as ink on scroll. But you've decided it doesn't matter. Because you're not trying to prove anything. You're just trying to be. And maybe that's the real miracle. That after all the figs and scrolls and silences and absences, someone still showed up, still sat beside you, still held the broken cup like it held more than tea. You look out over the water. The stars blink on one by one, as if someone is lighting them by hand. And without planning it, without even thinking it, you lean your head on their shoulder. They let you. And then, very softly, they lean back. No thunder, no doves, just the river. And two people who never quite learned how to stop writing to each other, even when the scrolls stayed blank. You don't go back to the bench the next morning, not because you've forgotten it, but because you no longer need it. It's not a shrine anymore, not a stage, just a wooden seat worn by countless other hopefuls who once waited for someone that never came, or eventually did, quietly like yours did. Instead, you wake early and walk without thinking. Past the fig vendor, past the crumbling graffiti wall where someone's drawn a new symbol beside your old initials, two overlapping circles, a kind of quiet Venn diagram sketched in chalk. You leave it alone because it's not yours anymore. That version of you, the one who waited every day, is no longer sitting there. She's walking now, with steadier steps, carrying a scroll, yes, but this time it's already open. You're headed to the bathhouse, not to look for someone, not to run into them by chance, but because your body aches and your heart wants to float. The caldarium is nearly empty, just steam and echoes. You lower yourself slowly into the hot water and let your eyes close. Not to sleep, not yet. Just to breathe. To exhale everything you carried for too long the not quite answers, the nearly confessions, the 7 words that unraveled you more than any love poem could. The silence is no longer heavy. It's soft, like a room that remembers you, like parchment that welcomes your hand again. Later, by the warm stone walls, you sit with your scroll across your knees. It's not blank, but it's not finished either. You haven't written a grand ending, just small observations, moments, things like they still laugh too loud at their own jokes. The fig vendor finally smiled today. I think I like the cracked cup more. Hope is ridiculous, and I'm keeping it anyway. And then, tucked into the margin, sometimes the absence teaches you how to arrive. You underline that one. Twice. Mainstream fact. Roman baths weren't just about hygiene. They were social centers, emotional reset buttons, and quiet sanctuaries. People bathed alone or in groups, sat for hours in silence or conversation. Deals were struck, lovers reconciled, and peace, however temporary, was often found in steam. When you emerge, your skin smells like pine oil and warm marble. The sun has lowered itself to a softer angle, turning every tile into gold. You head toward the steps by the river, not the bench. The bench belongs to the version of you who needed proof. This spot. This is where you simply exist, and you're not alone. They're there already sitting, holding the cup between both hands as if warming it with memory. When they see you, they don't wave. They just move over, make space, and you sit. Because this is the part no scroll ever captures, the quiet after, the companionship that doesn't demand declarations, the pause between question and answer where you both already understand. Quirky tidbit. Roman philosophers believed in the lucid pause, a moment of full awareness between action and thought. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But in that breath, they said, was where the soul lived most honestly. Historians still argue whether love in Rome ever looked like this, whether it was possible in a city built on power, ambition, and marble declarations. But you know now that it was, because it wasn't written in scrolls or shouted in forums. It was lived, in small figs shared, in blank scrolls left behind, in cracked cups passed between two people who had every reason to leave but stayed. And so, as the sun folds itself into the Tiber once more, and the city grows quiet, except for the soft hum of crickets and one far-off flute, you let yourself lean again. Not because you need support, but because leaning is its own kind of arrival. You are not waiting anymore. You're present, not for them, not for a sign, but for yourself. And in this soft golden Rome that is more than enough, and now you rest. The scroll is folded. The cup is empty. The fig pit, long since dried, sits quietly on a windowsill, somewhere gathering only dust and the occasional memory. Rome exhales around you, not as a city of emperors and marble and grand speeches, but as something smaller, sleepier, a place where love was written slowly, erased often, and sometimes never mailed at all. You sit there a little longer, letting the warm hush of evening settle behind your eyes. You can almost hear it now, the whisper of sandals across ancient stone, the clink of ceramic cups on worn tabletops, the laughter of someone you once knew, echoing just faintly enough to seem like a dream. And that's okay. Some stories don't need a loud ending. Some scrolls are never meant to be sealed. They're just meant to be held, remembered, rewritten if needed. So, as you lie back, let your thoughts grow slower. Let your breath move like river water, steady, wide, unhurried. There's no one left to impress, no reply you forgot to send, no fig you failed to eat. Only this moment, only this breath, only the soft, drowsy knowing that something inside you softened tonight, just a little. That's the kind of quiet Rome was always best at, and it belongs to you now. Good night, friend. Sleep well.